Hey everyone, welcome to this weekly Sidereal Astrology forecast for the week of June 30th through July 6th of 2025. All right, so this week we have a little bit of a milder week considering the very important shifts we've had and energies we've had the past few weeks. So this week is a continuation of the new lunar month that started about mid last week. So we had that new moon last week, and so now we're continuing that. We're going to come into the first quarter moon on Wednesday, which is usually the action-oriented phase of the lunar cycle. And here we may come to our first challenges of the cycle, but all in all, it's really good to challenge ourselves to really implement and integrate any new perspectives, any new intentions that we've had from the prior week. So most of the actual aspects are concentrated a little bit later in the week, and I would say it's still an important week yearly because we do have Saturn getting very close to that conjunction with Neptune right before Neptune goes retrograde. So Neptune's going to go retrograde on Friday. And, with this very close conjunction with Saturn, it's really a prelude to what early next year is about. Around late February and mostly in March of next year, we're going to have some new beginnings involving Saturn and Neptune, involving building things in our life that are more soul-fulfilling and perhaps bringing a little bit more soul-fulfillment or mental health and spiritual health into the structures of our everyday life. So we're getting a sneak peek of that, and I think this weekend we could certainly see that and maybe starting to reconsider some of these things with Neptune retrograde. Also, Venus would be over Uranus on Friday, which gives us a sense of perhaps some excitement, some new and different changes, some new values to be had, and maybe even some connections in relationships that can be unique or different from the ordinary side of things. All right, so let's go and take a look at all of this here in more detail when we return. Alrighty, so here's the sky for this week. We're going to look at this for each day of the week, starting first with Monday, June 30th. And as you can see here, we are using the visible sky on this channel, which is very different from mainstream astrology. You won't see this in mainstream because unfortunately they use, at least in the West, a seasonal system. But even in the East, they're not using the actual size of the constellations when considering the signs. Of course, Vedic does with their nakshatra systems and some of the more detailed systems. But all in all, with the signs, you won't see this. So if you are noticing that the signs are different, maybe some of the placements, like I'm saying right now, the sun is in Gemini, maybe you're expecting it to be in Cancer by now, definitely check out that link down below for more information on using the visible sky in what we call true sidereal astrology. Okay, so let's do a recap because we did have a lot of sign changes, a lot of shifts these past few weeks. And of course, we just started that lunar cycle mid last week. So we have the sun now in Gemini. This is where the lunar cycle started. It's really the time of the year to be focused on learning, curiosity, interest, and perhaps some of that social energy as well, maybe connecting with peers, neighbors, siblings, those of equal status, and just being interested, curious, willing to exchange. This can also bring out the very practical aspects of things, such as like business, trade, mathematics, engineering, anything, language stuff, anything that's more left brain in nature, more about forming concepts, understanding things very practically, and putting things into box and structures that the left side of the brain loves to do. So Gemini, great time to be focused on interchange and connecting the dots, whether it's internal or external as well. Now, the ruler of that, Mercury, is in Cancer, which suggests that while it is the time of curiosity in all this, the way we'll likely do that is in a more personal and emotional way, because Mercury rules Gemini. Mercury being in Cancer suggests that the way we can be thinking right now is more in terms of our intrinsic world, the internal world, our feelings about things, our emotions about things, maybe the past, maybe matters around security, or creating a safe and secure environment for ourselves and others. We may even notice some language or communications involving a more protective or even caring and nurturing nature. So we definitely have the water element in terms of how we can be going about some of this mental and communicative energy. Now, Venus has shifted into Taurus, where she's very comfortable, her ruled sign fundamentally. And so when it comes to our values, it comes to enjoyments, and it comes to some of those connections with others. We can notice this being quite grounding at the moment. So great to see the value of taking things slowly, one step at a time, stopping to smell the roses, cultivating more of the grounding elements of life, both internally and externally, is absolutely fantastic right now. And Mars in Leo, where he's been already for over the past month or so, really themes around self-expression are still emphasized. And this is all about being more direct with our self-expression, maybe putting a little bit more energy or drive into the things and people that are close to our hearts. So Leo's all about connecting to our hearts, expressing ourselves, maybe having a little more play or fun or humor or creative energy in our life. Anyways, really good to put some of that motivation and drive that Mars gives us into the more expressive qualities of Leo. So we have basically all of the fast movers in the staggering signs, all the way from Taurus through Leo, definitely mixing up the elements, fire, earth, air, and water. And so it's a nice balance with a lot of these things. And in general, a lot of these planets are well placed there. You might say Mercury might be a little challenged there in Cancer, perhaps, but everything else, very well placed. So that's the backdrop. But again, most importantly is we did just start that lunar cycle. And so this week is really the momentum building of this new cycle that just started. So we start here on Monday with the moon in Leo. Monday, just like the weekend, could be a great time for that self-expression we were talking about. So a little bit of that play, fun, creative energy really is the theme there on Monday. Now, once we do get to Tuesday, we're going to slowly start to enter into that first quarter phase, which will go exact on Wednesday, which is again the more integration phase of the lunar cycle. It's where the sun and moon square each other, and it suggests more about action, more about implementation, and again, in a way, coming to our first challenges of the cycle. So it's good to challenge ourselves, but in this way, it becomes very constructive. It's really during the first and third quarters of the lunar cycle where we notice a lot of things manifesting for the lunar month. And so any intentions you want to set around that in terms of, implementing things, challenging yourself, maybe manifesting things for the lunar month, it is absolutely an excellent part of the week to do that. And we sort of apex on that on Wednesday, or at least start that really strongly on Wednesday. So this whole middle part of the week, we're going to have the moon in Virgo here, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, Virgo being a very large constellation in the sky. And so this suggests that this middle part, this bulk of the week, really good for that improvement, really good for getting into the details, doing some of that work, some of that structure that Virgo likes to do. And if we relate this to the Gemini, these are both mutable signs and very different, of course, because it's the square, but both the same, what we call the modality. And both Gemini and Virgo have the modality of being mutable, of being changing, of being flexible. All the mutable signs strive towards flexibility and adaptability. So the way Gemini will do that is, of course, being, again, curious, interested, being flexible with treating life as more of a, curious, interested, and learning environment. Whereas Virgo creates flexibility through structure, being an earth sign. And so things like routines build structure, but also give us more flexibility, right? As we sort of automate things in our life or create a habit out of something in life, it can become more automated. It can free us up, paradoxically. So we want to create those systems and structures that automate things. And so it's a great couple, really this whole middle part of the week to be considering how we can create more flexibility, how we can do it through still being interested and curious and learning, while maybe this middle part of the week through structure, through creating those systems, routines, habits, maybe even personal development, maybe doing our work and service that creates that structure for more adaptability in our life. Okay, so that's really the bulk of the week here in terms of the lunar placement and that first quarter moon. Now, once we start to get into Friday, as we do finish that moon in Virgo, we've got a couple things here. One, from the yearly energy. Okay, we have Saturn and Neptune who've been very close about this past month, and this has all been the prelude or the sneak peek to what early next year is really about. Because early next year, they're going to go exact with the conjunction. That's late February, but mostly March once we have the lunar cycle with it next year. And what we have here is we have Saturn, the planet of structure and discipline and the things we want to build for the long term, in a union with spiritual Neptune. Neptune, the planet of actually dissolving structures and doing things that it's more for our soul health or mental health or spiritual health, and things that are more soul fulfilling. So when these are combined, it really is about that. It's about building, first of all, building a life that is more soul aligned, building a life that is good for our mental health, spiritual health, this kind of thing. And then the other way is perhaps looking at the things we've built in our life, maybe our systems, maybe our careers, maybe the structures, the things we've built, and see how we can implement some of that more receptivity into those. Have a little bit more peace, go with the flow a little bit more in terms of being a little more receptive to life and all this. But anyways, we could see this as essentially building a life that is more soul-fulfilling, or doing the things that we know will take time and perseverance that lead to more soul fulfillment in life. And any intentions around this is absolutely fantastic now. But of course, because it's just the prelude, and Neptune will be going retrograde on Friday, getting really close to that conjunction with Saturn, but not quite contacting it. A lot of things are still in reflection with this. A lot of things still need to be reworked. And so this really gives us really the next, with Neptune retrograde, the next 6 months to kind of rehash some of these things, to kind of reflect on what's so important to us in life, how we can have more spiritual peace or mental health in our life, and this kind of more spiritual or watery side of the reflection. So good to do that. Start to, mull things over a little bit, approach things a little bit differently in that department, maybe turn a little bit internally when it comes to exploring these kinds of questions, can be great. And for those of you who perhaps had a stronger spiritual energy this past 6 months, maybe a lot of uncertainty the past 6 months, anything very strong with that Neptune, it can ease things up a little bit in terms of however they've been going about in your life. They can now start to go about a little bit differently, and even in a way a little bit more with some space, or even a break in many ways. Now, it does still make the Neptune energy strong, and it's still good to be reflecting and going through all this, but a change from the past 6 months is definitely likely if you've been noticing any major themes around that for you. Okay, so that's really around Friday. That's a more yearly energy, multi-month thing, as you can see here. On a day-to-day level on Friday, Venus, the planet of our values and relationships, will be conjoining up to more spontaneous and freedom-oriented Uranus. So great to see that maybe there's some new values coming in. Maybe there's a value around spontaneity, change, thinking outside the box, getting outside the box in many ways. And this can be, of course, internally through enjoyments, through values, through even the material world as well, especially with Venus and Taurus. And Uranus and Taurus, but also with relationships as well. This could be perhaps some new things coming in that really challenges the way we view others or relationships in general. That sets a new seed and a new beginning here. So this is more of a yearly thing, that in the sense that we have Venus over Uranus every year at some point. So it starts a yearly cycle, but it really starts that energy anew here. So any intentions here around change, spontaneity, thinking outside the box, with enjoyments, with relationships, is absolutely great. And we could very well seed some new things here and see some new beginnings as a result of this, as we continue with this Venus-Uranus cycle into next week. All right, and then the rest of the weekend is definitely more minor in the sense of the aspects. Over the weekend, we're going to have the moon in Libra. It does place more of an emphasis on the relational side of things, whether they're already existing relationships or just how we're relating with others. Moon in Libra places themes around morality, what's right, ethics, what's mutual, finding mutual agreement, coming to middle ground. And outside of just the interpersonal, this is really starting from within. And so really a great time to see if there's anything we can bring back into balance in our life in general. Any areas that are out of balance, we can bring them back into balance. It's a really good time to kind of, recalibrate the scales, whether they're internal and personal or external and interpersonal, right? So great couple days, great weekend for this, Saturday and Sunday. Libra the scales, bringing things back into balance, likely striving towards more balance in our life, which is great. And, approaching things in this more middle path. And then Venus will be sextiling up to that Saturn-Neptune conjunction, very minor here, but it's nice to see that there perhaps, again, can be some things to enjoy over the weekend in the context of maybe some of these new changes, but maybe feeling a little bit grounded with our enjoyments, with relationships, maybe feeling a little bit at flow or a little receptive with the Neptune, with our enjoyments, with our relationships. Nothing major, but sextiles do give a little bit of an opportunity there, and it's nice to see that there's a little bit of an opening there, especially as Venus will start to trine up to Pluto going into next week. A little bit of support in those areas around Venus, the the connections, whether they're internal or external. All right, everyone. So that is the week in a nutshell. Really put simply is that we are continuing the new lunar cycle that started midweek last week. We're slowly building momentum into that and then coming into the apex or the action-oriented phase of that on Wednesday in the first quarter. We can start to notice a lot of things starting to manifest. And all in all, it's just a really good time to take some action. A great area to take that action with is with Virgo, is with that sense of improvement and creating the sort of automations or routines or habits or skills that can go into that. So creating flexibility in our life through systems and structures and automations can be a great way of working with that first quarter moon. Then the aspects are really concentrated around Friday, where we have the yearly energy around Saturn and Neptune, helping us build a little more of that life that's more soul-fulfilling and soul-guided in general. But again, just as a sneak peek, because we will be rehashing a lot of that soul stuff and spiritual stuff over the next 6 months with Neptune retrograde. Venus over Uranus gives us a bit of a new beginning with those values and connections, which are quite supportive over the weekend in general, and perhaps placing some themes on those relationships with the moon in Libra over the weekend as well. All right, so everyone have a fantastic week. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to stay tuned for the live stream. We go live here every Sunday at 1:15 p.m. Eastern time of the Americas there. Do join us for that. It's a great way to connect with the community and get a different take on some of the energies we're talking about here. And of course, answer any questions or connect with me if you have any, again, questions or things you'd like to share. So hope to see you there and have a great week, everyone. And I'll see you all next time for the next astrology forecast. Take care.